Most people aren't broke because they don't earn enough. They're broke because of 5 specific financial habits that quietly drain everything they make. And the frustrating part is that most of these feel completely normal. In fact, some of them feel responsible. Today we're covering the 5 money mistakes that keep people financially stuck, no matter how much their income grows. These aren't opinions. Each one is backed by data on how people actually spend and save. By the end, you'll have a clear picture of what's actually happening to your money and what to do instead. Let's start with the one that gets almost everyone. Lifestyle inflation. Why raises don't make you richer? Here's a question. When was the last time you got a raise, and where did that money go? For most people, the honest answer is, it just disappeared. A slightly nicer apartment, more takeout, a streaming service or two, some upgraded versions of things you already had. Within a few months, you're back to the same feeling, that there's never quite enough left over. This has a name: lifestyle inflation, sometimes called lifestyle creep. It's the tendency to increase spending as income increases, quietly turning what were once luxuries into baseline necessities. The psychology behind it is well documented. Behavioral economists point to 2 mechanisms. The first is hedonic adaptation, the human tendency to quickly adjust to new circumstances so that what once felt like a treat rapidly becomes your normal. The second is social comparison. As your income rises, your peer group often shifts too, and their spending habits become your visible reference point. The data reflects this at a national level. According to the U.S. Bureau of Economic Analysis, Americans saved an average of just 4.6% of their disposable income in 2024, down from an average of 11.7% in the 1960s and 70s. Meanwhile, according to a 2025 survey by willpower, the median emergency savings for Americans is just $600. And 37% of Americans say they couldn't cover an unexpected expense over $400. The problem isn't that spending more as you earn more is inherently wrong. Some of it is reasonable. Cost of living increases, investing in your health, eliminating genuinely uncomfortable circumstances. The problem is when it happens without intention. When a raise arrives and the money flows out to higher expenses before you ever decide where it should go. The fix is simple but requires action before spending kicks in. When you get a raise, automate at least a portion of it directly into savings or investments before it ever hits your checking account. Redirect the raise before you adapt to it. Not automating savings. Why willpower isn't a strategy. Most people save whatever is left over at the end of the month. The problem is, there's usually nothing left over at the end of the month. This isn't a discipline problem, it's a system problem. When money sits in a checking account, it gets spent. Our brains aren't wired to see a balance and leave it alone. The simplest way to fix this is to make saving automatic, so it doesn't require a decision at all. According to a 2025 NerdWallet survey, only 25% of Americans with savings accounts have money automatically deposited into their savings from their paycheck. A full 21% say they save whatever happens to be left over in checking after they get paid again, and 10% aren't regularly saving anything at all. The pay yourself first principle, sometimes called reverse budgeting, addresses this directly. Instead of spending first and saving the rest, you automate savings at the start of each pay period, then live on what remains. The amount matters less than the habit. Here's why it works at a behavioral level. Money that leaves your checking account immediately after you're paid is money you stop mentally counting as available to spend. What's out of sight genuinely is out of mind for most people. This is the same reason that 401k contributions, which come directly out of your paycheck before you see the money, have dramatically higher participation rates than accounts people have to fund manually. The practical step: set up an automatic transfer from your checking account to a savings or investment account on the day you get paid, or set up a direct deposit split at your employer if that option is available. Start with whatever amount feels manageable. The key is making it automatic, not making it large. Paying fees. You don't know about some of the most expensive financial mistakes aren't dramatic decisions. They're small, recurring fees that go unnoticed for months or years, quietly compounding against you. There are a few categories worth examining. Savings account interest rates. The average national savings account rate at large traditional banks is around 0.4% APY, and some major banks, including several of the largest in the country, pay as little as 0.01%. Meanwhile, as of May 2026, top high-yield savings accounts are offering rates around 4% or higher. On $10,000 in savings, the difference between 0.01% and 4% is roughly $399 in interest earned per year, money you're leaving on the table for the exact same risk and FDIC protection. Investment expense ratios. As covered in our earlier investing videos, the average expense ratio for actively managed equity funds is around 0.64% versus 0.05% for index funds. That difference compounds dramatically over time. On a $50,000 portfolio over 30 years, the additional fee cost runs into the tens of thousands of dollars. Subscription drift. A smaller but surprisingly common drain. Subscriptions and recurring charges that accumulate unnoticed. A 2022 study by C+R Research found that consumers underestimate their monthly subscription spending by an average of $130 per month. Most people can name their major subscriptions, but miss the smaller, less frequent ones. Annual plans, free trials that converted, services from old emails or family plans. Running a simple audit of your bank and credit card statements for recurring charges once or twice a year is worth doing. None of these individually feels catastrophic. But fees are exactly the type of cost that compounds against you in the same way that returns compound for you. Slowly at first, then significantly over time. Waiting to invest until you have enough. One of the most common reasons people give for not investing yet is that they don't feel like they have enough money to start. They're waiting for a raise, waiting to pay off a bill, waiting until the amount feels meaningful. The research on this is unambiguous. The cost of waiting is enormous, and it can't be recovered simply by investing more later. As covered in detail in our compound interest video, Federal Reserve Bank of St. Louis data shows that an investor who puts in $5,000 per year starting at age 25 and stops entirely at age 35, just 10 years of contributions, ends up with approximately $787,000 by age 65, assuming an 8% average annual return. An investor who starts at 35 and contributes the same $5,000 every year for 30 consecutive years, 3 times as long, 3 times as much money, ends up with approximately $611,000. The early investor contributed 1/3 the total money and came out ahead. That's what compounding does when it has time to work. The "I'll start when I have more" mindset treats investing as a luxury for when finances are in order. But the math treats delay as the single most expensive financial mistake a young person can make. A small amount invested regularly, starting now, consistently beats a larger amount invested later. If your employer offers a 401k with a match, start there. At minimum, contribute enough to capture the full match. If not, a Roth IRA or a low-cost index fund through a brokerage account are accessible starting points with no minimum balance requirements at many providers. Conflating price with value. The fifth money mistake is subtler than the others, but it shows up constantly in financial decisions, confusing how much something costs with whether it's worth it. This runs in both directions. Overspending on things that don't generate real value, premium versions of products where the standard version is identical, brand names where the generic is the same, recurring upgrades driven by marketing rather than genuine need, and underspending on things that do generate real value, quality tools you use daily, preventive healthcare, education, or skills that compound over time. The useful question isn't, is this cheap, or is this expensive? It's, What does this cost per unit of actual value it provides? A $5 coffee every day costs over $100 to $800 a year. That may or may not be worth it to you, but it's worth knowing the annual number, not just the daily one. Conversely, a $300 purchase that saves you 10 hours a month indefinitely may be one of the best financial decisions you make. Price is what you pay. Value is what you get. They're related but not the same, and making the distinction deliberately rather than reflexively is one of the clearest markers of financially healthy decision-making. So here's the full picture. Lifestyle inflation silently consumes raises before you decide where they should go. Not automating savings means relying on willpower that doesn't reliably exist. Hidden fees on savings accounts, funds, and subscriptions compound against you the same way returns compound for you. Waiting to invest until you have enough is one of the most expensive decisions you can make over a lifetime. And conflating price with value leads to spending a lot on things that don't serve you and underspending on things that do. None of these require a large income to fix. They require attention, a few intentional system changes, and an understanding of how the money actually flows. This is general information, not personalized financial advice. Consider speaking with a licensed financial advisor for guidance tailored to your situation. Like and subscribe.